Florida Maquis, I have heard you in certain videos refer to Florida as the new Free Republic of Florida and not the state of Florida. Are you alleging that at some point in the future, Florida is considering secession from the Union and that it will be no longer part of the United States? No, I'm not alleging that at all. What I'm alleging is that in reality, that has already occurred a long time ago, and that the only thing that truly matters is the de facto state of Florida, not the de jure state of Florida. What does that mean? Well, we're going to cover that in today's video, and I'm going to show you why historically this is always been the case. Things happen in reality way before they ever happen technically on paper. But to be diligent and to be thankful as we are commanded. Everyone out there, I hope you've had a wonderful week. I hope you had a nice, productive week and you can relax this Saturday, 10 December 2022. Currently, it is 16:51 hours. That is 4:51 p.m. in the afternoon for those of you in the civilian world. Here on the northeast coast of Florida, it is currently 66 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a high today, only about 70, and tonight it's saying 54, but I think it's going to drop quite a bit lower than that because we have a system moving in. Currently, the winds are out of the south at about 1 mile an hour, and the barometer is steady at about 30.13 inches of mercury. Also, everyone who has joined us, thank you. I very much appreciate all of the engagement down in the comment section, whether you agree, whether you don't, especially those of you who have joined us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, where it's only $1 per month as always, even less if you sign up for an entire year, fully refundable, first 90 days. What's the difference? What do you get for your dollar? Well, over there, no censorship. Here, I have to be very careful what I say, how I say it, and the topics that I choose. That's basically kept me alive the last 6 years. There are some folks that decided that they wanted to just go out because they felt like they had the right to and say whatever they want to, and they've gotten kicked off the platform. Discretion sometimes is the better part of valor, but in reality, Florida is really, truly no longer part of the United States of America. This last election cycle should have proven it. The conservative movement, everywhere but Florida, went backward, even in the Senate. It was 50-50 before the 2022 elections, and now it's 51-49. They actually gained a seat in the Senate. The liberals did. And as far as the House goes, should have been way worse. There's always a midterm shift. It was a trickle at best for conservatism. But in Florida, it was such a whitewash now that it's truly one-party rule. And I'm going to give you some math later on that will absolutely floor you. But what was I talking about earlier? De facto versus de jure. De facto describes practices in reality in law and government on the ground. Even though laws do not officially recognize them, it is generally used to refer to what happens in practice. De jure is a Latin word that means lawful, legitimate, or abided by the law in general parameters. De jure can be any position, power, or position authorized by a law. Let me give you an example that's going to stick with a lot of you. This is a scene from Heartbreak Ridge. The man on the right was, of course, the antagonist. See those gold leaves on his collar? See, de jure in law, this guy was an 05. He was a major. See these stripes? Sorry for the blurry picture. On gunning highway sleeves, he was an E7. Now, de jure, in 100% of the cases, an 05 outranks an E7 and will always be in charge. Now, if you were going to go into combat, would you want guys and people following you because they had to, because they were afraid of the pip on your collar? Or would you want them on your side, behind you, in your foxhole because they believed in you? Because they trusted that you were not going to get them killed in reality on the ground. You see, in de jure, they should have followed the major because he outranks the E7, the gunnery sergeant. But what was the de facto case? And what should always be the de facto case? In a grid down, power down, shit, it's the fan situation, if I'm ever put in a position where I have to lead people, I don't want people following me because I have some pip on my collar or I'm wearing some rank. I want them to believe in my leadership skills de facto on the ground, regardless. That's what's happening in Florida. Florida Marquis, the federal government's so much more powerful. You're just one state, and he's the president, and DeSantis is just a governor. Why do you think people are following Governor DeSantis and supporting Governor DeSantis and supporting conservative ideas and ideals and completely ignoring anybody that follows technically the leader of the free world, Joe Biden? Why? You see, de facto, the guy in charge is on the left. See, de jure, technically the president, they have the president of the United States and all the little governors are all little assistant presidents, right? See, that's the de facto versus de jure argument. In law, yeah, you're right. But in reality, who wins? In reality, who has won every single time? It's not even been close. And that math that I promised. You see, in the national Senate, conservatives on the national stage, in the rest of what used to be the United States, everything north of Florida, conservatives actually lost ground. They went from 50-50 with Kamala Harris having the tiebreaker to now 51-49. She doesn't even have to bother. But in Florida, we already had a supermajority. Now we just have a hyper supermajority. We have a 70-30 majority. Now here's the math that's going to blow your mind. This is the Florida House of Representatives. It's 309 to 126. This is how bad it is. If every conservative member of the Florida House decided, you know what, my vote's only going to count for 3/4 of a vote, and then you took every liberal in the Florida House of Representatives and said their vote counts times 2, the conservatives would still win. Even if the conservatives made their votes only count 3/4 and they doubled the vote of every single liberal, the conservatives would still win. It'd come out to be 231 to 252. That's how wildly lopsided it is. It is the king's peace. It is one-party rule. For those of you who don't think voting matters, I got another piece of information for you today out of Brevard County. What if I told you they're thinking about reinstating corporal punishment in the schools down there because they have changed the school board and the behavior of the kids down there has gotten so ridiculously out of hand? It matters. From 2012, when Democrats had a 535,000 advantage in voter registration, to 2021, it's all about numbers. It's all about numbers. More registered Republicans than Democrats. It's all about voting. You see, you can't be nice. And that's what I get a lot on this channel. People will go down in the comment section and they'll be contrary just to be contrary. Or one of my favorite things is they'll spout some ridiculous, stupid lie off of Breitbart, then state it as a fact, and then ask me to comment on why I don't this, that, or the other based on this thing they're assuming is a fact, which is basically a lie, which is a trick of the media. See, DC wanted Common Core. Guess what? We just banned it. We put in our own brand new standards and got rid of Common Core. We didn't debate with them. We didn't debate with them about whether it was right or wrong, or we didn't leave in parts of Common Core or come to some, media. We just got rid of it. I have all the receipts of what's happened the last 2 years. Every single time the CDC said this, that, and the other, we just said no. No forced vaccinations, no forced masks, no forced federal overreach. Parents. And fines. For anyone who decides they want to stand with DC, we fine them. We make them put their money where their mouth is. Remember critical race theory? This was the best. This was absolutely the best when Byron Donald said this. And I'm going to read the quote again because it's worth repeating. The essence of critical race theory would teach his 3 biracial children that he, their black father, was oppressed by America's history of white supremacy, and that his wife, their mother, was the oppressor. And in horribly, terribly racist Florida, Byron Donalds on the right absolutely crushed Lily White's Cindy Lynn Bonnier for representation down around Fort Myers, Naples. See all this thing they called about talking about race, NMAAHC, look that up. White culture, rugged individualism, emphasis on objective, rational, linear thinking, and hard work being the key to success. We embrace this. And the final quote from our first lady, and this is the key. No matter what you're going through in life, no matter how hard it seems, when your back is against the wall, pick yourself up off the ground and fight. Fight like hell. God is great. God is good. Hope is alive. And don't let the bastards win. Exactly her words. She went through a cancer battle the last couple of years. And you can read it over at Fox News. Brevard County has decided to drop the hammer on misbehaving kids in their school districts. It's got so bad that huge flight of teachers out of that liberal area. They can't even keep teachers. So now the sheriff has stepped in and they've changed the policy because there's a brand new school board that leans heavily to the right. Used to be completely left. And they're going to put in a very, very strict code of conduct. And this has actually been the case historically. This is Library of Congress. This is 1764. The Declaration of Independence, I believe, was 1776. 12 years before that, read how the colonies were independent. And everything that they were doing, they were already independent. They were already acting as if they were their own makers of their own destiny, I guess, for lack of a better term, their own country. That was the reality, just like it's the reality now in Florida. It doesn't matter what. Well, technically, you're not to secede. You have to. Well, what would have been the legal way for the colonies to leave England? There isn't one. There isn't one. When you're leaving tyrants, you can't be bothered by pieces of paper. The king wasn't going to let the colonies go. Washington, D.C. wouldn't technically let Florida go until we just make it too difficult for them. We become ungovernable, and we govern ourselves. And we govern ourselves at a much higher standard than Washington, D.C. governs the rest of the country. That's why some don't like Florida. Because we do. We have a much higher standard. But that's why. Florida is truly the land of the free, home of the brave. The last remnant. And that's probably getting a little bit too far into a topic that Christians will understand of what the last days remnant church is. The land of milk and honey. You see, yeah, technically the land mass is still attached. But that's probably the only thing we have in common. Because when we look at what's going on, conservatives are just too nice in the rest of the country. They feel like that they need to come to some type of a agree to disagree kind of baloney. Some middle of the road decision that is that, no. Fight for what you believe is right. And do not compromise. And don't let people be contrary just to be contrary. If you believe in it, fight for it. Or leave. If you're truly outnumbered, which is truly the case in a great many places. I don't know why there's one single conservative left in the state of California. Or Arizona, to be truthful. You're clearly outnumbered. You see, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this whole voting being rigged thing is something that came from the Democrats to keep conservatives from leaving. You see, this is the idea that is, well, you don't stand any chance anyway because voting doesn't matter because this machine or that magical make-believe thumb drive or because they can this with Dominion that and baloney. It's total baloney. Do you think we have hand-counted paper ballots in Florida? No. We have voting machines. All sorts of them. We count way more votes than the vast majority of the states in the union. We got 22 going on 23 million people down here. That's why I just think it's cowardice. And it does. It reminds me of this situation from the movie. There's people that want to stick with this idea. Well, technically, actually, this is really the blah, 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 blah. You get this down in the comments all the time. Or they're letting Florida do this for this reason or that, because they don't want to accept the fact that their way of doing things doesn't work. I mean, Georgia should be proof. Georgia has got a lot of good folks, but their way of doing things is very different than Florida's way of doing things. And we get laughed at a lot. See, 05 versus E7 shouldn't even be a question, should it? But when the bullets start flying, who do you want? Who do you want following you? There's another image. I wish I would have brought it up. Season 1 of The Walking Dead. Those of you that know about this, go find the scene where Shane finally they're on the farm, loses his patience, and he lets all of the zombies that are being hidden in the barn by the guy who's in charge of the farm, the old guy, where he finally lets them all out. And they find the little girl. He makes a great comment, during that. He's like, you've got to wake up and face reality. Because they were still holding on to this idea at that time that they could somehow cure the zombies, that somehow they could bring the zombies back from what they were. And he's like, you guys are just deluded. You're absolutely deluded. You've got to face reality as it is. And this is what Florida would say to the rest of the country. You need to face reality as it is. And you've got to stop. You've got to take your own gloves off. You've got to stop being so nice. And don't tolerate any of it. I wish I would have brought up a picture from that scene. Probably would have gotten in trouble because of all the gunplay, but maybe we'll do that over at the Patreon channel. We'll show that scene. It's about a 2-minute scene where Shane gets into it with Rick over. It's like, look, you cannot continue to mollycoddle these people on this farm and let them believe there is some hope. You've got these things, these zombies are going to kill you. There's the only choice you have is to kill them before they kill you. And I don't mean that in reality when it comes to politics, but politically, that's what you have to do. Politically, you have to crush your enemies. Politically. You can't let them have a voice. You can't let their voice have any credibility. You can't think just, well, we need to have a 50-50 Senate, we need to have a 50-50 House just so everybody's voice gets heard. No. So no, absolutely not. So I will leave it there, but if you want peace and you want liberty, there's one way to do it. You've got to throw down the gauntlet and you've got to fight. And from that point on, you can do what you want. But it takes fighting. And a lot of people, I don't think, are ready for it. I think they want to do things the way things were done last century. But the 21st century, it's a little bit different. So I'll leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.